Should we at long
Houston?
last move on to Houston? Yeah.
No, that we had to do that because we were so far apart. I think that was the one to go along on. Okay, the Houston Rockets. I bet you we're gonna be much closer on this one. Drafted Jalen Green at number 2. Drafted Usman Garuba at number 23. Drafted Josh Christopher at 24. Acquired Alperen Sengun from Oklahoma City, the number 16 pick for Detroit's 2022 first, I think. Top 16 protection in 2022. Basically, these two picks they got, a 22 first from Detroit and a 23 first from Washington, have such ridiculous and lengthy protections that there's a good chance these turn into seconds or don't convey or do. We're going to get into this on OKC's slide or section. But anyway, got Sengun basically for a couple of future firsts that aren't going to amount to very much. Signed Daniel Theis, sign and trade technically, 4 years, $35.6 million. There's a team option on the 4th year. He's got a 15% trade kicker. $26 million of that is guaranteed. David Nwaba, 3 years, $15 million. There's a team option on that 3rd year as well. Signed Daishen Nix to a 1-year deal at the minimum. That's non-guaranteed. Same for Tyler Bay. Signed Matthew Hurt to a 2-way. Signed Anthony Lamb to a 2-way. They lost Sterling Brown, Kelly Olynyk, and Avery Bradley. And the other thing, it's not really a transaction necessarily, but basically agreed amicably with John Wall that we're going to try to trade you. We know we can't trade you because nobody will take that salary, so you're just not going to play. But he's going to be cool about it, which actually, pretty solid handling of that, because that doesn't always go that well. If we're going to give credit or a demerit one way or the other, I'd say that's a positive. So that's the Houston Rockets offseason, mostly draft-based, but not totally. What were your thoughts on how the Rockets did?
I gave them a B, and I came close to a B+. I'm just, it felt like they maybe went a year too far on Daniel Theis's deal, and why did he need a trade kicker? I guess it's to sign with a team like Houston, but who was giving him 3 and 26, 27 in the first place? And I'm just a little bit confused not confused. I get why you would like Sengun here. I'm not his biggest fan overall when looking at his game. The fact that he would go at number 16, but Usman Garuba dropped all the way to 23, and he's a defensive monster based off what I've read about him and just watched some film on him. I also love Josh Christopher. I love the Jalen Green pick. I think it was the only pick, but the way he looked in Summer League, it's like they have that dude. And now they have these 2 years before they owe anything to OKC where they can kind of slow play this. They have their own draft picks. But I'm just like, I know those picks are heavily protected until Kingdom Come, but you gave up 2 firsts as a team that's, yes, you still have plenty of picks because of that Brooklyn Nets trade for James Harden. But like, I would argue at least one of those picks is probably going to convey, if not both. Like, they get as low as top 9 and top 8 protection respectively. And so you really need to believe in Sengun. And I don't know that you're at that point where you should have made that type of a consolidation trade. So those are moves that, and I think that one more so than the Theis made me uneasy. But then you just look at their offseason and it's like, okay, I basically love their draft. I even like the idea of seeing what can Sengun play with Daniel Theis, or can he play with Christian Wood? Can you even use him as the lone big? What kind of quirky lineups can you build with Usman Garuba in there playing alongside a Jayshawn Tate and even a David Nwaba, who is fantastic defensively. If he hits his threes at even a 33, 34% clip, you have a very good rotation player there. Daniel Theis is just going to be so good for their lineup flexibility. Someone else who could play with Christian Wood or just be your only big. I'm more confident in Houston's future than I was at the time of the James Harden trade. Maybe that part of that is Jalen Green, but it's the rest of their body of work. And I also think this is something that more recently takes into account the fact that they're able to sort of handle the John Wall situation right now so gracefully, where they were upfront to him and were at least made it, maybe there's some sort of wink agreement between them where it's when we inevitably can't trade you, maybe that will be sort of generous in a buyout, because sort of like OKC with Kemba Walker, that's a lot of dead money for 2 years, but you also don't need it to spend for real because you're not going to be good in those 2 years. And it sort of takes you right to the end of, okay, we have our own picks. Now our commitments to our OKC commitment in 2024 is going to be up. That's when you'll have a ton of flexibility. Maybe some of these youngsters have hit by then. And so I thought this was a really good offseason from Houston, probably slightly better, if not a lot better than expected. And so B plus range. I ended up settling on a B because I don't particularly like Sengun that much, and I'm just that transaction was just mega curious to me.
Yeah, I think so. I gave him an A minus, and I think the only differences are I do think of Sengun as potentially a very very good play. I mean, like
He's too
this is
throwback
based a
for
lot
me,
on
if that makes any sense.
he's oh yeah, the way he fails is very foreseeable. He's just not athletic enough. He's not center size, but he has to play center. He doesn't impact the game defensively, but his skill level is like off the charts. And then you marry that with he was the MVP of the Turkish league at 18, and all of his translatable stats, like Kevin Pelton, based on his numbers, Sengun should have been the number one prospect in this draft. And there are a lot of people that had him at least top five, just based on guys that are this good as teenagers in really good European leagues just don't fail. That's the the optimistic view of him, which was persuasive to me. And just watching him play, like I mean, if he slims down, whatever, like his skill level is super high. So I think at 16 for a couple of picks that way down the line may not be that great. Great. I love the rest of their drafts. I like Garuba a lot. Jalen Green, no brainer. Josh Christopher, great pick. Um, the other difference I have, I think that bumped my grade a little bit from yours. So we're not that far apart, but I think Daniel Theis is someone, even with getting a first for him, somewhat protected whatever at the trade deadline. Because teams are gonna, who doesn't need a playoff tested guy who can play center and move a little bit, and if he's not a star, sometimes the matchup's not right for him, but he is a guy that's going to be a fit and fill a need on a lot of teams that are looking at what they've got going into the playoffs or going into the second half of the season and saying, we really need a guy like that. And at basically MLE level money, with the kicker, but that player team option on the last year, I think he might be like a positive asset if they trade him, because it doesn't make sense for him to be on this team. It doesn't why is the Rockets, when you're tanking again, why do you want him? So I view that as sort of a cagey potential, trade chip. But so I bumped them up to an A minus for those reasons. Love their draft. I think they just the Rockets kind of know what they're doing, which was sort of in doubt. I feel like, or at least a lot of people were skeptical after Daryl Morey left.
Yeah, and I'm going to bump them up to a B plus. You talked me into it. I think the reason you have Theis on this roster is you don't really have another like center. Like you don't know if you want to play Sengun or Garuba there or how many minutes you can get out of them at center. You have Christian Wood, and so Theis really does serve a purpose, and he's going to give you more defense than Kelly Olynyk. I just think age 29 at that price, given the way the direction bigs are going, is he taking? How many threes is he taking for you? But you talked me into it. I'm going B plus for the Rockets, and look, they haven't even I still think that they could probably get, if Daniel House is healthy and hitting his threes, just because of what he gives you on defense positionally. And then even Eric Gordon, who before he was injured last year was one of the most efficient players in the league on drives. They can still get stuff for those guys, and at the same time keeping them. And I think you more so look at Eric Gordon because he's expensive and commands more touches on offense. They don't do, they're not a detriment to you developing others. Eric Gordon isn't someone, he's stood around, watched James Harden dribble for 80 years. He can stand in the ultra deep spot while Jalen Green goes to work, while you're trying out, Josh Christopher, Kevin Porter Jr., all those guys there. They did it. Also, Houston brought Dante Exum back, is something I should have added. And so that's even, I like that. I don't think Dante Exum is going to ever be healthy enough to stay in, turn into anything, but they have the outline, the skeleton of what kind of could be a defensive monster. So I very much like what they did, and you just talking, I bumped them up to a B plus automatically, because that's how I guess how much I wasn't confident in the grade that I actually gave them. But yeah, anyway, so you convinced me to bump them up to a B plus.
Love it. Love it.